Attention parents and coaches. Do you wish you had a safe social media platform for your youth athletes? Fortunately for you, there's a revolutionary new app that helps with just that. Introducing Small Player, Big Play. Small Player Big Play app provides young athletes, parents, and coaches a user-friendly sports social media platform. The app allows users to connect with friends, make new friends, create groups, text, chat, and post pictures and videos of you and your teammates participating in your favorite sport or activity. To begin, users can simply download and sign up for the app using an email account. Younger users have the ability to sign up using their smartphone and a parent's email address. From there, users can begin to interact and engage with other users of the app. Small Player Big Play app also gives users the ability to live stream full games and events. You can live stream your event so that friends, family, or anyone in the world can see you in action. Users can also share posts from the app to their other social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. What are you waiting for? Get in the game and share your love of sports with the world. Download the Small Player Big Play app today.
Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011,
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
with a focus on football.
Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. Mahomes takes the snap. He is just going to throw it long for Demarcus Robinson. It is going to use up all the time. The game is over, and the Chiefs' kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 326 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. We're doing things a little bit different tonight because of the snowstorm here. Justin is not in the studio with me, but he is here via Zoom, as is our guest. Welcoming back for the third time is Mr. Paul Roberts. Paul, Justin, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Maybe go out for a first round of shoveling after this, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was doing okay until I saw the snow coming down, and after 4 years at Syracuse University, I've seen enough snow for a lifetime. So I know some people think it's pretty and it's fun. I do not. I don't.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun when you're not the one that has to get rid of it. Like my kids today were already freaking out when there was just a very light dusting outside. Like they immediately were like, "Let's go out." And I'm like, "There's nothing out there. Why do you want to go out? It's cold out there." No, they had to go out and run around for about half an hour. But yeah, I know tomorrow is going to be absolutely bonkers for them as they have a remote virtual day of school, which is going to be done quickly so that they can get outside and play. But thank you, Paul and Justin, for joining me on the show tonight. Glad you both could make it. And we're going to have a fun show. We're going to be focused on the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about Super Bowl 55 between the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. And Justin, I did want to mention and point out that was the last time we'll ever hear that intro. It'll be changed by the next time.
Yeah.
The episode 327, which will be about 3 weeks from now, which will actually be our 10th anniversary show. So we're looking forward to being back in 3 weeks' time to, we'll talk about the Super Bowl recap, what happened, but we'll have a new intro. So I'm hoping it's still related to the Chiefs, and we're not talking about Tom Brady getting a 7th ring. But like I said, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But first, Justin and I wanted to ask Paul a few questions outside of pro football. And let's start local first. Let's go hyper local here in the West Lawn area. Paul, you're very active in the Scholastic community in this area. You like to watch a lot of the student athletes play. Not just at Wilson, all around Berks County. But there was a big game on Friday night in West Lawn featuring Wilson playing Reading. Both teams came into the game undefeated at 8-0, and Wilson, I think, was on a 30-game winning streak. Both teams look very strong again this season. So far, Paul, what's your take on Wilson, and what did you think of the Wilson-Reading matchup Friday night?
I'll say this, it was really awkward with the limited fans there because normally if it's Wilson Reading, it's going to be a mob scene, whether it's in West Lawn or even at the Geigel, which holds about 3,400. You're right, Wilson had won 30 in a row, 22 straight to end last year, and then they came into that game 8-0. I'll be honest with you guys, I was not expecting that type of game. I would, if someone would have told me it would have been lopsided, I would have taken Reading high. I was really impressed with the way Wilson shot the ball. And I spoke with Coach Coldren after the game, and he wasn't surprised, but 10 of 15, I mean, you don't see pro teams shooting 67% from beyond the arc. And that's what Wilson was able to do against Reading High. They were 10 of 15. So for them to make 10 threes, that was a huge difference in the game. It ended up being a 14-point margin, but it wasn't that close. I mean, that was really a 20 to 25 point type of game. I mean, Wilson really handled them. Stevie Mitchell had over 30. He was phenomenal again. But early on, you saw Chris Vasquez knock down some threes. That was a big game for him because a couple years ago he was at Reading High, then transferred to Wilson. So he was certainly ready to go. I'm gonna have to start calling him Robin Hood now because he's shooting these arrows after every made three everywhere. I guess he picked that up on YouTube. That was a big thing a couple years ago, and then it kind of faded out. But I guess he's trying to bring it back. And then Ryan Strobel nailed 3 3-pointers in the third quarter. And that really gave Wilson some separation. But I'll tell you what, I mean, I think that was about as well as they could play. And I've seen every team in Division I in person. I've seen Muhlenberg and Conrad Weiser in Division II in person. Those are the top two teams there. Wyomissing is the leader in Division III. I've been able to see them in person. I was hoping to see Antietam last week, and then unfortunately, due to a COVID issue involving Wyomissing, that game got canceled. So Wyomissing is going to be off for a couple weeks, but thoroughly impressed with what Wilson was able to do. You know, not having Timochenko, not having Lockhart. You know, sometimes you wonder how are these guys going to be able to do on the glass because they're playing 4 guards. I mean, it's a really undersized team. Richard Waugh starts at a power forward center position, if you want to call it that, and he's 6'2" or 6'3". I thought Luke Holman, who everybody knows from baseball, phenomenal pitcher. I thought he gave them good minutes defensively. And then Reading comes back yesterday and beats Harrisburg at the Geigel. So I know their fans have big expectations every year, and I'm sure they were upset, not just losing to Wilson, but the way it went down, kind of getting blown out like that. But I wouldn't count this team out. You know, it's late January. You don't win championships in January. When you have Osamanu, who is getting a ton of PSAC interest, when you have Daniel Alcantara and Ruben Rodriguez, who had 24 against Wilson and then came back with 27 last night against Harrisburg. When you have those type of players, you know, Reading is still going to be a factor. They're a little thinner than I think some people thought coming in because they weren't aware of some of the players that had left, including a couple that are starting at Muhlenberg now. And Denham Adams is not playing, and I'm not sure if he is going to play at all for them this year. So they don't have quite the size. Ermel Florenville is down in Florida now. They should get Deshaun Wilson back sometime, I think, in early February, who will help with their depth a little bit. But overall, thoroughly impressed with what Wilson did.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, I think you nailed it on the head. You said exactly what I was thinking. Going into the game, I was really concerned just with the way Wilson had played against Mifflin just a few nights prior. I was concerned about the game. You know, they're riding a huge win streak, and I know that that's always on their mind. You know, they had that motto of not wanting to lose another game that they carry over from last year. But with the way Reading had been playing and how stacked they were, even though that they were young at a lot of spots or in the depth category, it just seemed like things were working Reading's fashion. And when I was following your updates on Twitter and watching the game on YouTube, I was just blown away by what was happening. I couldn't believe they could keep it up. But Justin, you've seen them play in person. I have not gotten to a game yet. I'm hoping to change that in February. But Justin, you've seen Wilson Boys Hoops play. What do you think so far of the Bulldogs basketball team?
Yeah, I think Friday night was that was a really good performance, and Paul mentioned that. Like, I don't know, like in terms of the shooting, that was pretty surreal. What I noticed the biggest difference between Wednesday, because I was at the game on Wednesday at Mifflin. I was keeping the scorebook, and they one of the things that I know they weren't real pleased with was some of the defensive effort during that game, and they were able to shore things up and get stops when they needed them down the stretch in that game, which, you know, you can go to that, the signs of a good team is to win when you're not at your best. And that's absolutely true. But everyone leaving that gym on Wednesday night in Shillington knew they better play a heck of a lot better on Friday night, or it was going to be a long or short night. And the defensive effort against Reading was what really stood out. The shooting stood out, but the defensive effort to hold them to, minimal points in the first half, that doesn't happen. Reading usually wants to get out and run. And, that was one of the things, maybe having the four guards and fairly veteran guards, like there's a lot of seniors there. Wilson didn't turn the ball over. I think I read that it was like 3 turnovers in the first half or something, that's good, because if you turn it over against Reading, it's going to be 2 the other way. And so it was fun watching them do that. From my point of view, it was fun watching them do that on Friday night. But I thought, again, reading about it the next day and watching some of the interviews that Paul had after the game, stuff like that, they all were just like, yeah, it's great, but we know we're going to face them. They'll face them again in a league schedule. They'll likely face them after that, and could face them
after that again.
Well.
Yeah. It's crazy to know what's going to happen down the stretch. I think the meeting at the Geigo could go a little bit differently. Not saying obviously that Wilson can't win, because that's certainly not true, but I expect the game to go a little bit differently. From mine and Justin's perspective, obviously we hope Wilson comes out on top. But let's
quick little side note: the first varsity game I ever kept the book for, so I just fill in on the book for the varsity. I do it for the 9th grade team. Was Wilson at Reading at the Geigo, Lonnie's freshman year.
Oh, geez.
So that was with Trey Code and that Wilson team, and they won.
They were good too.
That game. But the first high school game I ever keep the book for is Wilson at Reading at the Geigo, and I'm just like, oh man,
nothing like being thrown into the fire right away.
Right, exactly.
So that Wilson team actually went 4-0 against Reading High that year. Yeah, Trey Code was outstanding. Yeah. Callaway was on that team. Yep. Matt Timochenko was on that team, Evan's older brother. That was Sam Smith was on that team.
Was that 13-14? 2013-2014? Yeah.
Yep. He turned into a really good Division III player, left-handed kid who could shoot it. They had Kyle Watkins, who was kind of a blue-collar, solid role player. Yeah, that was a really, really good Wilson team. And then the rivalry certainly shifted after that year.
I don't think Lonnie lost again after that year. I don't think he lost again to Wilson. So
yeah, they had a streak of, I think it was 5 or 6, division titles until, of course, last year when Wilson again was able to get them twice in the regular season, then beat them in the county playoffs, and then, of course, the district final, which was the best game by far, where Wilson had a double-digit lead in the third quarter and then actually trailed briefly in the fourth quarter. Reading had a tremendous comeback in that game. And Wilson ended up holding on and got its first district title.
Yeah, and Justin and I saw you there, Paul. We all were in the building for that one. That was a heck of a game. Actually, my first district basketball game to photograph, so that was a great one to be at. A lot of fun, and hopefully, hey, I hope Wilson and Reading meets a few more times. That means both teams are still performing well, and that's great, especially when you're talking districts for Berks County basketball. Let's transition off of basketball onto football, but before we talk about Buccaneers, Chiefs, and the Super Bowl, I think it would be important for us to discuss the kind of pending blockbuster trade involving two of the franchises. The Lions and the Rams have apparently agreed on a trade. Goff and Stafford involved, obviously going back and forth, Stafford to the Rams and Goff to the Lions, but it's really what the Rams are sending to the Lions that really makes it jump off the page. You know, they're getting a third-round pick this year, but then 2 first-round picks next year and the year after. It's mind-boggling what the Rams are giving up to get Stafford, but it's as much getting Stafford as getting rid of Goff, sending him packing. Paul, what do you make of this trade involving 2 franchise quarterbacks?
Well, I think it shows just how important that position is in the National Football League. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you don't have a really good quarterback, you don't win. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I know there are people out there that think quarterbacks get too much attention. There's too much time spent talking about quarterbacks, but it's the most important position in professional sports. And there are some examples of average quarterbacks, getting to a Super Bowl. You think about a Mark Rippon, a Doug Williams with the Redskins, Dilfer. I mean, there are some, but the vast majority of Super Bowls, you're going to see really good quarterback play. So I think the Rams are at a point right now where they feel like, hey, the rest of our team is ready to go. I mean, we're Super Bowl ready if we have a quarterback. And I'm not sure exactly what's happened with Goff, because when they got to a Super Bowl, he had a really good year and it looked like he had a bright future. Now, a lot of what they do is off of play action. They like to establish the run. That's when Gurley was playing really well, and they would establish that and then play action pass off of that. But I think Goff has shown he's not an elite quarterback, and they want to get someone in there who can really spin it. And Stafford has not been on great teams, but he can throw the football. I mean, he can make all the throws. They haven't had team success, but he's certainly talented. And I think they were in desperation mode and realized, look, are we going to waste this defense with Aaron Donald and company, Jalen Ramsey? Are we going to waste these guys because our quarterback isn't good enough to get the job done? So did they give up a lot? Absolutely. But I just think they felt Goff wasn't the answer, and the rest of their team is ready to go. So let's try to address that position.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, my dad says he thinks that they gave up way too much, but if it turns out if they get to another Super Bowl, I know that people would like them to win a Super Bowl, but if they get back to the Super Bowl, it was probably worth it for them. If they fail to win the division or, God, may even fail to make the playoffs, it's going to look awful because they don't have a first-round pick till 2024, and they haven't made a first-round pick since 2016, and that was on Jared Goff. So, yeah, they're definitely in win-now mode 100% completely. I guess we should have seen the writing on the wall with the way no one was committing to Goff and, basically all the exit interviews that were happening after their loss to the Packers. It was just kind of crazy to see how quickly it happened. How about, Paul, did you see the story about how Stafford basically would accept a trade anywhere but New England? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I did read that. I'm not exactly sure what that is all about, unless he's just not a Belichick fan or feels like it's not a good situation there. But you brought up an interesting point about how this is going to be looked at if the Rams don't get to the Super Bowl. And I would agree. But let's remember that division. You have the 49ers who were decimated by injuries this year, but still a good team. I mean, they're not a team that they beat some teams this year that you thought, man, they don't have anybody healthy who's playing, and they still were able to win. I think that organization did a good job of drafting up front, which is where a lot of games are won. And then also Seattle. I mean, anytime you have Russell Wilson, that's going to be a dangerous team. So that division is no walk in the park. And people were really high on Arizona coming into this year. You have Kyler Murray. I mean, we'll still wait and see. I think the jury's out there, but when you play Arizona, it's not a gimme win. So that division is tough. I did see that though about Stafford. I'm not sure why he felt that way. Why the Patriots were the one team. Maybe he looked at their offense this year and thought they don't have any playmakers, which they don't. I mean, their quarterback play was very poor. Cam Newton looked awful, but did you see guys getting open when you watched New England this year? Did you see separation from their wide receivers and their tight ends? The days of Gronk getting open all the time, they're over. So maybe that was something that had to go into that situation. And Sean McVay is well respected, and he's a young guy. Everyone was raving about him when they got to the Super Bowl a few years ago. I don't think he forgot everything he learned. So probably a better fit for Stafford. And this, I know for a fact, definitely warmer where he's going than playing up in Foxborough.
That's for sure. Now, I know, you see, Justin and I were talking with Adam Filer about this. We have a group chat going, talking all kinds of sports stuff, and Adam was all too eager to share the Stafford New England thing because we're all Patriots haters. He's a Bills fan and I'm a Dolphins fan, so anytime anyone can stick it to New England, we're on that. And my uncle's a huge Patriots fan, and we like to mention that every time we're on the show. Anytime we can bash New England, we're on it. But I think Justin wants to take this one, so I'm going to let Justin talk about it.
Yeah, so one of the things, and I've been a Rams hater, right? So but I feel like it was a lot to give up, but if they make it to a Super Bowl, and I feel like they clearly feel like they were a quarterback away, and when I look at it, it's hard to argue that they're not. Like, based on the way Goff has played the last couple of years, if they get an average year out of Stafford, that would be probably about as good as Goff has played. And I mean, I as an NFC fan, I'm like, oh man, I think the Rams could really put it together. Paul mentioned they have that division has potential to be loaded. Some people think the Niners are potential, to maybe go out and get a big time quarterback or something like that. But when I look at Stafford's, I say only 32. So I don't think it's out of the question that he could maybe play 6 more years or so. Maybe longer. We're seeing some guys do it now. I don't know about his desire to or anything like that. But, if he's not looking to hang it up in the next year or two, it'll be interesting to see. But the Rams really have backed themselves into this kind of situation where they almost need to go out and make big moves each offseason in terms of free agency and trades, because they usually just don't have the draft capital to be able to build their team that way. They went out and got Jalen Ramsey and traded away first round picks, and then they find themselves in these cap positions and usually need to go out and make big moves. But it's hard to argue that it's not working for them. I mean, they're getting it done, but I am hesitant to just be like, oh, well, it's working for them. Yeah, but they're only halfway through that stretch where they're not going to have any first-round picks. So, from a talent standpoint, it's one thing. But they talk about now, the biggest thing with drafting guys in the first round is you get them locked up for 5 years if you want them. So I think that's where it's going to maybe hurt them, is in the salary cap issues, not so much the talent. But you know what? Looking at where my team is with the Eagles, not that they did it this way, but in the sense of if you tell me, oh, you win a Super Bowl and then you're going to stink for a little bit, but okay, I think Rams fans right now would take hey, if you tell me we've got a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl in the next 3 years, a really good shot with Stafford, we'll take it and worry about the future later.
So Justin, Was there anything else surrounding the Patriots stuff, though? Paul kind of hit on one point that I wanted to bring up. Do they have enough
So
offensive talent? But I think there was another key aspect of it that didn't appear to me on surface until I read the articles and talked to you guys about it.
So I didn't actually have a chance to read the article yet. One of the things that I thought was interesting was, or that I thought maybe was like, I don't know that people want to go and be the guy in New England after Tom Brady was there. And I know they're ultra competitors, and like that's not necessarily the way they think, but I mean, I know Cam Newton was there this year, but I feel like people are going to write that off, and I don't know that that would necessarily like fill in that. I don't know that that's where he's looking to be.
Yeah, well, the other thing that was presented in the articles I read about it, including one from Pro Football Talk, was that Matt Patricia is now back in New England, and he was there in Detroit the last 2.5 years, and there was kind of rumors saying that Stafford and Patricia may not have gotten along or saw eye to eye all the time, and he may have been fed up with the Patriot way, at least the way that Matt Patricia went about doing it. So it's interesting to see what's going on with two big quarterbacks changing locations. But those teams are not in the Super Bowl. Let's talk about the ones that are. So Chiefs, Buccaneers, Kansas City back for the second straight year, looking for back-to-back, which would be the first team to do so since the Patriots about 15 years ago. So, Paul, what do you think on the surface, this matchup? I feel like when we talked to you the first time back in November, we almost were telestrating that this is what the game was going to be. I mean, Justin and I were hard on the Chiefs, and we were kind of doubting the Bucs because at the time they were looking okay, but you were all about Tampa Bay. Credit to you. Did you see this matchup coming like we think you did? And what do you think of the matchup?
Yeah, when they signed Tom Brady, I thought it would be a Chiefs Bucks Super Bowl because their quarterback play last year. I harp on turnovers all the time, whether it's high school, college, or the NFL. It's the most important stat. When I look at a box score, it's the first thing that I look at because it decides games. And when you had Jameis Winston throwing 30 picks, and now you go to the greatest quarterback of all time, you don't have to be a Bill Parcells or a Joe Gibbs or Bill Belichick to look at the skill guys that Tampa Bay had and say, you know what? If they actually get a quarterback who's not throwing to the wrong team, they're going to be pretty darn good. I mean, when you look at their wide receivers and their tight ends having Evans and Godwin, they have talent there. They just needed to stop turning it over all the time. So I did like them. And the Chiefs, I don't know that I get a pat on the back for that. I mean, that was pretty obvious. But I think what happened is they had that stretch, and sports betting has become such a huge thing. They didn't cover since November 1st. It was actually against the Jets. That's how long it had been for the Chiefs to cover a game going into the playoffs. And I think what happened is people kind of soured on them just because they weren't blowing teams out. They weren't covering. They were winning, but winning by 3, winning by 4, winning by 6 or 7. But then you got to the Browns game, and they were clearly in control of that game. And then, of course, we know what happens. Mahomes gets hurt. Wilson's own Chad Henne comes in, makes a phenomenal run on 3rd and long. It's funny, when I talk to my friends from outside the area, they always say how slow he looks. And I'm like, listen, this guy in high school was on the track and field team. I mean, and not just for javelin, he could really run. In fact, I believe their relay team won the district championship. So, I mean, he was a guy that could certainly tuck it and run. Everybody remembers the run against Reading High in football, but then he got to Michigan and all of a sudden it's, man, Chad's slow. What happened? Well, what happened is now everyone else runs a 4.5 or a 4.4. And certainly that's what happened in the NFL, but to see him run and then dive like that. And then for Andy Reid to have the confidence in his backup quarterback. That tells you a lot about what Andy Reid thinks about Chad Henne, to have him throw the football on that fourth down play. But my point is, before all that happened, I think they were on their way to covering against Cleveland. And when they played Buffalo, it was one of my favorite plays of the year, because Buffalo was getting so much love from the public. And I am usually a contrarian bettor, in that I will look what the public is doing and I will go the other way. The opposite theory is what I like to call it. And it just seemed like everyone was on Buffalo going into that game. And they had a great season. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they deserve a lot of credit. I think the franchise is headed in the right direction. Picking up Diggs was a phenomenal move by that front office to give Allen some talent there. But I've seen that Bills defense this year, and I just had a feeling that Mahomes was going to have his way. And that final score was deceiving, because you had the onside kick. They got another score. Kansas City, after that slow start, they got down 9-0. They dominated the Buffalo Bills. So I like Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I would definitely take it at 3 as opposed to 3.5. Just a little nugget why that's so important. 15% of all NFL games land on 3. That's a very significant number. That's why you hear about the hook and the difference between 2.5, 3, 3.5. It really is a big difference. But I like Kansas City in this game just because of the Bucs secondary. I like their front seven. I don't like the back end of that defense. And even though they beat Green Bay and they did it in Lambeau, I give them a lot of credit. Aaron Rodgers threw for almost 350 yards in that game. The week before, the Saints handed them the game on a silver platter. The turnovers were 4-0 in the game. Drew Brees couldn't throw anything over 10 yards in that game. And then their first playoff game, they struggled with Washington, who had Taylor Heineke as opposed to Heineken, which I may have one after the show. But they struggled with that Washington team. So I like Tampa Bay, and I think they can put up some points, because I'm not in love with Kansas City's defense either. But I just don't know how that Tampa Bay secondary is going to slow down Patrick Mahomes, who now should be fully healthy after another extra week off. Kelsey's one of the best tight ends we've ever seen, not just of his era, ever. And you have maybe the fastest player in the game in Tyreek Hill. I think back to last year's Super Bowl, last point here, guys. Remember how they were struggling against San Francisco? They had 10 points until the fourth quarter, and then scored 21 and won the Super Bowl with over 30 points. Now, I would ask you guys and anyone else this. Who has a better defense? That San Francisco team or this Tampa Bay team? And they lit them up in the fourth quarter. I mean, these guys just have a way of flipping that switch. So I'm hoping it's going to be a really good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't want anybody to get me wrong there. But I like the passing game of Mahomes versus the Bucs secondary.
Yeah, I think everything you brought up is spot on. And the biggest question for me as it comes to the Buccaneers is that secondary, especially phenom rookie Antoine Winfield Jr. may not play. They've kind of been coy about his status. He didn't play against the Buccaneers last week, and he hasn't practiced, or he wouldn't have practiced this week if they had been going through full practices. So if you're missing probably your best secondary player going against Mahomes and the Chiefs right now, you can't feel too great about that. I feel like the only thing that makes me not, completely 100% say the Chiefs are going to win is that Tom Brady is the quarterback, and there's just something about him when it comes to the playoffs and the Super Bowl. This is his 10th time there. Like, that's absurd. I've actually both rooted for and against Brady in the Super Bowl. 9 times. I probably have been for him 3 and against him 6. Generally, I come out on top in that, and whatever I want to happen happens, except for that Falcons game. And oh man, that is a touchy one for a lot of people. But I don't know. I still think it's going to be the Chiefs. I've been on the Chiefs all year, and that has nothing. I mean, it's not solely because Chad is out there. It's just because obviously on paper and on the field, they are the best team, and they proved it every week so far, except one, a really random game against the Raiders back in like week 5 or whenever it was. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is the Chiefs game. Paul, you mentioned like you favor the Chiefs for sure. You're not counting the Bucks out, but you're going with the Chiefs. Will you pick them both straight up and against the spread then, or what are you thinking along those lines?
I would do it against the spread, but I would tell people to take 3 as opposed to 3.5. And this is where it's helpful to have different options as far as sports books that you can look at. Most of them now have it at 3. Some have 3.5. I saw one that had it at 3, but it was juiced up to 120. So, typically it's 110, it's 10%. They actually had it at 20%. So we'll wait and see. This is what I'm hoping, that, like you said, Joe, and it's a fair point. I'm hoping that the public, as the game gets closer, has the same rationale and says, you know what? I'm not going against Tom Brady. He just went to Lambeau Field, and this is his 10th Super Bowl. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, which he is. And I'm hoping that then, we see more 3s out there, and I will take Kansas City at 3. I look at that Packers game. They had the meltdown at the end of the first half where they give up a bomb with a second left, which should never have happened. And then early in the second half, you get that catch, fumble, short field touchdown. And now all of a sudden you're looking at a game. It's like, wow, this could get out of hand. And really those 2 plays turn things around. But Brady in the second half,
Disrupted.
some of those interceptions, he did not look good. So
especially that one he lofted up to the right sideline. That was just weird.
It looked like a punt.
Yeah.
I just, and also the head coaching matchup, Arians versus Reed. I will take Reed any day of the week there. He's so good at game planning. Now he has an extra week. Go look at his record off a bye. It's tremendous because he has the extra time to prepare. So I'll go Kansas City -3. And I also am looking at the over here because I think the public's saying, man, that's a huge total, which it is. But the people that make these lines, they aren't dummies. Okay. There's a reason that it's 56.5. And when you look at that Bucs secondary, and Kansas City's defense is not elite. They have some very good players, but you can move the ball on them. So right now I'm leaning a little bit towards the over.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, what is the over-under right now? But you said it 50. Is it 56 or 56.5?
56.5.
56.5. Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You're looking at like 31-27 type of deal, which right there would, the 3.5 could be come in plays. You're talking four points. It's getting awfully close for a lot of people. A lot of people sweating when, at the end with especially in the games now in the Super Bowl, will be tough to say they're going to go for the touchdown, not kick the field goal and make it pointless. But we see plenty of games throughout the year where teams do stuff that just really makes either, the house or the bettors very, very upset. Justin, what is your take on Chiefs Buccaneers? What are you feeling about Super Bowl 55?
Yeah, so I'm a little worried about the Chiefs' offensive line with Fisher going down with the Achilles injury. But I feel like the time to prepare is going to be key. Like if that would have happened early in the game in the Super Bowl, I think it's a bigger issue than when it happens. They're going to have the 2 full weeks to prepare. Like you said, I look at it, if the Chiefs were to win this game, they would have lost one meaningful game since the middle of December 2019. They lost to the Chargers, I believe, early in December last season, and they lost to the Raiders earlier this year. The Week 17 game.
Yeah, I don't really count that.
They
one.
lost, but right, they didn't need it, and that's just an unbelievable run. But we see it over and over again that they just get it done. It's not. I know Paul mentioned the spreads and how they weren't covering, but I was talking to someone before the Bills game, and we're like, that trend is going to break at one point, and they're either going to lose or they're going to run away with the game. And they ran away with the game against the Bills, even though they were down 9-0. But we said it. We saw them down 9-0, and we're like, oh, we know how this is going to go, and it's exactly how it went. I just look at, like I thought that was an interesting point about the defense they went up against last year. That San Francisco defense, that was, people were talking about
Lights
it being
out.
like one of the all-time great defenses. And through 3/4 of the Super Bowl, people were talking about it being like one of the best ever.
Then they took that
Especially with
picture.
what they were doing to Kansas City. Yeah, and then they just, next thing you know, in the blink of an eye, they scored 21 and they're winning the Super Bowl. And I don't know. Joey also mentioned it with Tom Brady over there. It's hard to be like, oh, I think, I don't think they can put up the numbers, but I don't know that in a shootout like that I'm going against the Chiefs. Like, I know they've got the wide receivers and the weapons, but I just feel like I've seen this a lot lately from Kansas City. I don't know. The Bucs are good, but I would say, I don't know. I don't feel like the Packers were necessarily as good as advertised. The Saints certainly weren't. The Saints, like, they beat them twice early in the season, but ever since Drew Brees got hurt, they were not the same team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Saints lost to the Eagles. I know Drew Brees wasn't playing, but the Saints lost to the Eagles this year. And then, and like you said, they struggled in Washington. So I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm riding with the Chiefs this week.
All right, yeah, I for sure. I am definitely on the Chiefs. I mean, Tom Brady gives me pause, but I got to go with the Chiefs. Ride with Andy Reid and Patrick and Chad. Can't go wrong there in that quarterback room. Absolutely love to see it. But my dad says, and Paul mentioned this, but my dad was reinforcing. He says, you know how Andy Reid is when he has 2 weeks to prepare. Paul, do you know what Andy Reid's record is coming off of a bye? I know it was ridiculous and he was undefeated at some point. I don't know if he still is.
Yeah, he's not undefeated, but I mean, it's a really high percentage. I mean, if it's not the best in the league,
I think
top
it is
2 or 3, but I think it is the best in the league. And the Fisher injury, that is a concern to me because I like to look at offensive lines a lot more than most people, just because I think that's where everything starts. And if you can't protect the quarterback and if you can't run the ball when you need to, you could be in trouble. So that is a big injury that's not going to get talked about as much as it should because you have Brady and Mahomes and you have Kelsey and Hill and Evans and Godwin and Fournette and all these other skill position guys. That is a major concern for me. Now, you have a mobile quarterback, which I think helps handle that. If you had, a stick figure back there, I think it would be a bigger problem. Maybe they can design some rollouts to the other side, to free up Mahomes, but he's about as mobile as they get in the NFL. And I'll give you another name to watch here, and that's Chris Jones, who is a defensive tackle for Kansas City. He's a guy that you better be able to take care of. I mean, he's not Aaron Donald, but who is? But he can be a game wrecker. I mean, he's had some big seasons in this league. He's a very good player on the interior. And one thing that Brady doesn't like, and no quarterback likes, is pressure right up the middle, where you really have no time. And Chris Jones, a defensive tackle, the center guard combinations for Tampa Bay, they better be focused on him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's as much as, we want to talk about Tom Brady and the Bucs and the offense and what they've been able to do so far these last what have they've won what? Have they won 8 in a row? Weren't they 7-5 at one point? I think they were 7-5 at one point.
Yeah, they were 7-5 and the Patriots had climbed back to 5-7 and I was thinking, I'm like, man,
they got it right where they want them, right?
Here, like they could end up, within a game or two of each other, but
and then
that clearly did not happen.
That didn't work. But yeah, they were 7-5, so they won their 4 final regular season games, and now they've won 3 in a row in the playoffs. So they're on a nice little winning streak as well. But I think it comes down to pass rush and offensive lines could dictate the game, and if the Chiefs do have trouble shutting down the front 7 of Tampa Bay, then we could be in for a different ball game. But I still have to go with the Chiefs, as all three of us are on Kansas City. And I think the last bit here before to close out, we'll stick with the Super Bowl talk, but I want to switch gears and go into the fun side of sports betting. Some interesting prop bets. Paul, I don't know if you partake in the weird and eclectic side of sports betting. And if you do, I would love to hear some of the ones that, not necessarily that you put money on, but just ones that you always like to see where things are trending. You know, we're talking national anthem and coin flip and Gatorade color and anything else you can come up with. Are there any out there that you've seen of late?
This is a funny story from a couple years ago. One of the podcasts that I listen to that focuses on sports wagering, one of the hosts somehow had seen something from a worker in the stadium that they were there, and I forget who was doing the anthem that year, but they were in the arena while she was practicing, you know, like a run through, and timed it. And somehow he got a hold of this information. So when the prop bet, one of the popular ones is how long will, you know, the anthem be? So this guy,
it's like insider trading.
Yeah, it really was. So this guy said that they had information from someone who was inside there and it was going to go over, and it certainly did. And it wasn't really that close. I think it wasn't last year. I think maybe it was 2 years ago. So that's just a funny one there. I'm not as much of a prop player as a lot of guys are. It's become extremely popular, you know, just like fantasy football, where you want to focus in on certain players. I like to use the props because I think sometimes they can tell the story of the game. For example, if you look at the passing yard props for these quarterbacks, Mahomes is at 325 and Brady's at 295. I mean, we're talking almost 600 combined passing yards, which gets back to the over
that's what I was going to say
earlier.
Yep.
You see those type of numbers, that means they're going to be going up and down the field here, which would lend itself to a higher scoring game. So I don't always play the props, but I like to look at them just to see kind of how the game might go out.
Well, and I think it's important from a viewership standpoint that we get the offense on the field, because the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it's not just because the Patriots won, but Patriots-Rams was boring. Like, that's the worst you can get out of a Super Bowl. And I feel like that's the first time we were saying that in a while. I feel like the Super Bowls had been pretty good of late, have been fun and entertaining, and there's been great storylines. But I feel like that Patriots-Rams one was just not good. I mean, I feel like most of the country didn't want New England to win just because, well, it's the Patriots and they've been winning so much. And people have a love-hate relationship with Brady, but then it was boring on the field. And last year, thankfully, that fourth quarter really helped things out. And it would be exciting to see just an all-out offensive slugfest this year. And I think, like you said, the prop bets are at least the experts are thinking that could be true. Now, you said Brady was at 295, in the 295?
Right, 295, and Mahomes was 325 for his passing yards.
Yeah, I like the over for Brady. If they're going to win that game and stay toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, I feel like Brady's got to hit 300. So that's what I'd be thinking there. What about MVP odds, Justin and Paul? Obviously, Mahomes and Brady are at the top of that list. If it's not one of the quarterbacks, the prop bets have Kelsey, Hill, and Evans as next three. Do you buy into that, or is there someone else do you think stands out that could possibly steal the MVP award from one of the quarterbacks?
Last 20 years, no running back has been named MVP, so I probably would not waste any money on that. You know, you got to go quarterbacks to me. Now, if you're looking for value, and, you know, you want to take a shot at Kelsey or Hill, or if you think the Bucs are going to win the game, you want to take a shot at Evans, you know, just to get the longer odds. But it's almost always the quarterback.
Well, yeah, it's tough to get a receiver because the quarterback's got to get him the ball.
Right. That's where I look at, like, if it's not Brady or Mahomes, I think it's going to be Tyreek Hill, just because in terms of he's got the ability to have like multiple just insane video game-esque style plays. And if he had a few of those and a few touchdowns, like he had in the Bills game when he went like 102 yards on that like 80-yard play or whatever it was. But like if you have some of those types of plays, I could see him getting it. But like you said, if Kelsey's getting touchdowns, well, Mahomes is throwing them. And if Evans is getting touchdowns, Brady's throwing it. So like I think the quarterbacks are obviously the most likely to get it. If I had to go away from them, I think Tyreek Hill would have a shot, just because he literally could score every time he gets the ball.
Now, I don't know what sports book this is. I didn't dive in too much. It's pretty much just a list with some odds. But yeah, Tyreek Hill I think was fifth after the quarterbacks and Kelsey, or maybe it was fourth then. Yeah, it was Mahomes, Brady, Kelsey, then Hill fourth. But the other one of note here is then any defensive player. It's like quarterbacks, the electric offensive guy that doesn't just catch the ball, and then any defensive player.
The last time the Bucks were there, didn't Derek Brooks win it?
No, it was the safety. Wasn't it that random safety? He had 2 picks, I believe. And then I think he burned out at Tampa Bay a year later, and I think he disappeared. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can give you the odds. This is from DraftKings. They have Mahomes at minus 105, Brady plus 210, and then you start getting into these other positions. Tyreek Hill plus 1,200, Kelsey plus 1,300, and then you look at running backs, Fournette plus 2,500, Clyde Edwards-Helaire plus 2,800, and Evans and Godwin are both plus 3,000. Honey Badgers plus 4,000, but you can see Antonio Brown plus 6,000. Take a shot on him, and Gronk is plus 7,000. So
those seem like thank you for your donation kind of
odds. Yeah, I mean, but what it shows me though is they really seem to think Kansas City's winning this game, because look at where Hill and Kelsey are compared to Evans and Godwin. I mean, Hill's 1,200, Kelsey's 1,300, Evans and Godwin are plus 3,000. So
Godwin's had a huge postseason for them.
Yeah, he's really good. So that's another case where I like to look at the props just to see if there's any hints in there. DraftKings, by the way, has the Chiefs at -3 and the total's 56.5. The money line is minus 160. So, I don't see myself playing that just with that type of juice. The Bucks on the money line are plus 140 to 145 in that range.
Can either of you pull out the name of the Tampa Bay safety from back in 2003?
I can picture him. And you're right. He did leave.
He played, I think, another year in Tampa and then left. His first name does start with a D. It's not Derek, though. Dexter Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Dexter Jackson was the MVP of was that Super Bowl 37 against the Raiders. We've only had a few defensive players be MVP, but we did have one relatively recently with Von Miller back in Super Bowl 50. I said I was like, a wide receiver generally is tough to win the MVP because the quarterback's got to get him the ball. But we had Edelman win it just 2 years ago for the Patriots, and he was the 7th wide receiver to do so. So it's not out of the question, but it'd be interesting to see if Mahomes can do it again after winning it last year. I don't believe when the Patriots went back-to-back, Brady didn't win back-to-back. No, Deion Branch won the second one.
Right. Imagine, keep in mind, though, that Edelman won it, and the final score was 10-3 or whatever, or 13-3.
Yeah.
Like, that's even crazier that a wide receiver would win it in a low-scoring game.
So it looks, I mean, obviously your team has to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl back to back to have a chance at back to back MVPs. So it hasn't happened since, oh boy, Terry Bradshaw, is it? Terry Bradshaw, the last person to go back to back in 79 and 80, Super Bowl 13 and 14. If Mahomes would be able to repeat with his Chiefs. So that's interesting. How about the Gatorade, Paul? Let's finish on a fun one. How about the Gatorade? Do you have in particular a color choice for you when it comes to electrolyte infused beverages?
Well, as a Syracuse grad, I would probably go orange, but for betting purposes, you have to go red, right? If you think Kansas City's going to win, you want to go with their team colors. So I would say red for that.
No, yeah, I'm completely with you there. I wish, where is this coming from? Sports Betting Dime. That's where they're pulling these from. So they have the link to orange plus 200, red plus 300. Then I like to go lime green and yellow. They're plus 700, but I think I'm completely there with you. It's got to be red for the Chiefs or the Bucks. I mean, that was a big thing making the rounds in the uniform aesthetics community, that the Buccaneers and the Chiefs use the same red Pantone. It's the exact same color. So yeah. Do you subscribe to any of those interesting uniform matchups? You know, the Bucks are technically the home team because the NFC is the home team designated this year. They're actually playing in Tampa Bay, the first team to actually play in their home stadium, but they chose to wear white instead of the dark colored uniform. Do you make anything of those nuances, Paul?
Absolutely not. You know, it cracks me up. I hear Eagles fans a lot talk about, well, they're wearing the Kelly green or they're wearing the black uniforms. You know, that's fine. I will say this. I thought the Flyers uniforms tonight were pretty cool. And I thought the Lakers uniforms the other night were a little bit in blue. Nowadays, it seems like every team's got 37 different type of uniforms. But as far as it pertaining to the game, no.
It's just a fun coincidence, right?
I don't. Yeah. I got to get this in, guys.
Sure.
Because I know we're wrapping up here. Off the air, we were talking before the show about, because you guys see on my Twitter, I do a lot with college basketball, and I've been fortunate. I'm right around 70% now, just a little bit low. I'm 32-15, which probably means it's time to fade me. But you asked about the NBA. So, and I said I try to stay away from the NBA because you go insane because of the swing, the runs in the game are nuts. Well, tonight, the Indiana Pacers were up 20 on the 76ers playing without Embiid. The Sixers are now up 7 with 7 seconds left.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they have outscored the Pacers in the fourth quarter 35-15. So
wow.
That's why I try to stay away from the NBA because it is nuts. And that's not the exception to the rule. That is the rule in the NBA. It's just crazy runs. I mean, for the 76ers, you know, to be down 20, not have Embiid and come back and win this game. But that's the NBA.
Yeah, let's finish with our Super Bowl preview show with a talk of the Sixers. I think that makes the most sense. What do you make of the Sixers with and without Joel Embiid and the way that he plays like 3 out of 4 games? It's weird to me. I mean, I know it has to do with wear and tear and whatnot, but you know, in my day, players used to play every game they could play.
You're not big on load management?
No, not really.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they won tonight against a good team on the road, so I'll give them credit. But they're not even close to the same team without Joel Embiid, and the numbers bear that out. I mean, they're not a contender without him playing, and I think it is frustrating to a lot of fans. And I've just brought it up because I keep hearing the MVP talk. You can't miss 25% of your team's games and be the MVP, in my opinion. I'm sorry. LeBron James is 36 years old. You know how many games he's missed this year? 0. He hasn't missed any of them. And Embiid now tonight, he's missed 5 games. They played 21. He's already missed 5. Is he having a wonderful year? Yeah, he's dominant. Most likely the best center in the league. There aren't a whole lot of true centers anymore, but he's having a terrific year. But when you're missing a quarter of your team's games, I'm not going to vote for you or say you should be MVP against a guy who's also having a great year and shows up every night.
Yeah.
And LeBron, listen,
Justin is a LeBron hater. Go ahead, say it.
Right. I will, and it has toned down a little bit over the last few years, but LeBron had the shortest off season you could possibly ever have, and is still playing every game. Like you said, it is super frustrating as a Sixers fan. On the other hand, right now, I'm just like, okay, if that
save him
means
for
he
the
can play
playoffs.
3 out of every 4, I'll take it. Because I feel like eventually he's just going to get shut down for, a month or something like that, because that's what happens with the Sixers. If you're good, you'll be out forever. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. I saw Paul mention it. Figure we should talk about it on the show. Unfortunately, the Sixers made a great comeback to get the victory. The Flyers choked and are now in overtime against the Islanders, despite being up, I believe, 3-1 entering the third period. But so it goes. It's still early, but Paul, I appreciate you joining us again here, a third time, just as fun as the first 2. And we'll have to extend the invitation to you again in the next month or so to talk more sports with us.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on. Always a good time. Plus, it allowed me to prevent shoveling for at least an hour. So
yeah, there you go.
I had a good excuse not to even to begin shoveling. So Thank you for that.
Sorry we couldn't extend it a little longer and push it off until the morning for you, but might want to get out there before it gets too deep.
Yeah.
So,
this is taking me back to my Syracuse days, but you never know. Sometimes I feel like when they forecast 12 to 18 inches, that's when we get 4. And then when they say a coating to an inch, that's when we get a foot.
Yeah, I can go off in a diatribe for you with my meteorology degree if you would like. But no, that's why today, people ask me all the time, just like all these Facebook weather pages that have popped up that like to draw the maps. Everyone's commenting, how much am I going to get? How much am I going to get? People ask me, what do you think? And I always basically look at what the forecasters are, the professional and the amateur, and then I cut it in half because it's much better to underestimate than it is to overestimate. Because if we get, 8 inches, things are still going to be closed. There's not going to be school. A lot of businesses are going to be closed or have delayed openings. The same would be true if I say we get 18. So I'd much rather, be like, nah, I'm thinking you were going to get a good 6 to 8 snowstorm versus them saying, 15 to 20, 18 to 24. Because then if you don't get a 1.5 feet, people are mad. It's just you got 10 inches. What are you mad about? Oh, you said we were going to get 18. What does it matter?
It's just like everybody was mad at the Chiefs for not covering week after week. And then,
when is the weather betting coming up? That's probably a thing already. How much snow are we going to get? What's the over under? What's the spread? So I've been telling people, we're going to get 8. We're going to get 8. Because there was a time this morning where people were jumping on the 18 to 24 bandwagon, and it already changed, and that shifted farther northeast, so we're down to only 10 to 15, I think. So, but I've been saying 8 now for the last 36 hours, so I'm going to stick with that. And if I'm proved wrong and we get more, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as we don't only get 4 or 5, I'll be fine. So... All right, guys, I think that's it for episode 326. We hope everyone enjoyed our talk of hoops and the Super Bowl. And Justin and I, like I said at the beginning, we're going to be off the next 2 weeks. We've been hitting the podcast pretty hard with the Bulldog Hour and this show for the last 6-7 months. So we're going to take a couple weeks off to watch the Super Bowl and then celebrate Valentine's Day and President's Day weekend. we'll be off, but we'll be back on February 21st to celebrate our 10th anniversary. Yep, February 2011 to February 2021, 10 years of Justin and I wasting time and talking sports because it's what we would be doing on text and phone and social media anyways, so why not put it out there for people to yell at us. So, all right, so that's it for us. We'll be back again in 3 weeks. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and I think all of us here would say, go Chiefs.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as The Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.